Welcome to Good for Bitcoin, a weekly show recorded live every Friday, where we recap the top events of the week and talk about everything that is good for Bitcoin. If it's built on Bitcoin, then it's good for Bitcoin. Let's get started.
Content shared on this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It does not constitute financial, investment, or legal advice. The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guests and do not reflect the official policy or position of any other agency, organization, or company. We encourage you to conduct your own research and consult with a qualified professional before making any financial decisions.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Good for Bitcoin. Kate, it's been a quiet week, I feel like, this week.
I know. It has been a quiet week, but we've still shipped some cool stuff on the Stacks side. This week, I'm really excited because I launched the... I didn't launch it, but I released like a new digest of it, the Stacks Dev Digest. And it was cool to see like a lot of the projects and challenges that had been going on for Stacks builders. Sometimes you're just not privy to it, but once you see it in front of you, you're like, whoa, there's some cool things happening. So there's quite a few challenges that happened through December and January and that are going to happen in February for builders who are interested to come to Stacks, earn some money.
By challenges, you mean like in a good way, like hackathons?
Oh yeah, I mean like, I don't mean difficulties. I mean like events and stuff, like ways to win, basically, like
different
a competitive
competitions,
way.
which are challenging.
Yes.
But yeah.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying. So that was cool to see, things that are going on with our devs and how they're kind of building a community there.
Yeah.
So, how was your
lots
week?
Of stuff. I mean, I feel like everything kind of kicked off with, like our time like at Dev Connect, and then like since then it's just been like builder event after builder event, challenge after challenge.
Yep.
We just posted today, I think, that there's like some in-person events that are going to be happening.
Yeah, those are cool.
Well.
Yep.
There's one in Lisbon, and I think hopefully I can say that there's another one that's going to be for East Denver.
You can say it because I published it. So if you can't say it, then I shouldn't have published it. But
I haven't posted about it yet, but it's happening.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
that'll be cool.
Lots of stuff.
We'll be able to meet some more builders in Denver, which will be awesome. And yeah, we have a cool community of builders here for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, lots of grants. The grants program also, going to be happening on Stacks. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff for builders, which is very cool. Love to see it.
Very cool.
Also, a good reminder that this is not a Stacks sponsored show.
No,
we just happen to work for Stacks Labs, but this is an independent show where we cover all the Bitcoin news and some Stacks news as well. Just because we're so deep in it, we have to talk about it. So.
We are passionate.
But yeah, we just we do this show for the love of the game, right?
Yeah,
just to stay.
And it helps us keep
updated.
us on our game too. Like it helps us understand. I don't know, maybe just like connect the dots, and it's great for when we meet people outside of the Stacks ecosystem too. It really helps you connect the dots, have good conversations, and bring Bitcoiners into Stacks, because like we've talked about many times, you and I were both Bitcoiners first, and then we found this cool new thing called Stacks. We are very independent here, and we just like to keep up with what's going on.
Yeah. So just a couple news stories to talk about this week, but a couple kind of bigger ones, especially with the Clarity bill, which we'll definitely dive into more. Before that, we got to talk, of course, about all the public companies that are buying Bitcoin, starting with Strategy. They bought a lot of Bitcoin this week, 13,627 BTC, which is I think one of their biggest ones that I think in the past few months. I think there was a few where they bought maybe 10,000, which is still, of course, a lot, but 13,000s, that's a big amount of Bitcoin.
It is a big amount. Before this show, I didn't get to listen to the whole thing, but Saylor was on What Bitcoin Did podcast with Danny Knowles, and I guess it got kind of heated. I'm not really sure what was said because I haven't gotten to that part yet, but it's something I'm going to go back and listen to. But they're talking about public companies buying Bitcoin. And I guess there was some hot takes in there. So I'm excited to go back to listen to that and see if there's anything cool we can talk about next week or the week after or something like that. But yeah, I'm not sure what got heated, but when I saw this, that they had such a big buy, it's like a lot of big news for strategy.
Interesting. Yeah, I remember this was when Peter McCormick was hosting the show. Yeah. It was a few years ago. And this was before the ETFs were around. And they had Michael Sonnenschein on the show. He's I don't think CEO, but he's like the head of Grayscale. And at the time, like Grayscale was kind of the only way that you could get like Bitcoin exposure. Yeah. And it was like an attack on Grayscale because the fees were like really high. I think it was like 1% like fees or something like large compared to like what the ETFs are now, which is like near zero. Yep. And at the time, like the way that the Grayscale Trust was set up is like you could, if you're an institutional investor, you could invest, but like they couldn't like sell any. So like they wanted to like unwind the trust, but it was like impossible with the way that it was structured. And it was like this really heated thing. And it was kind of awkward to listen to, honestly. It got that bad where it was just like, it's just weird. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. It's just some controversial stuff happening on that show, I guess. We'll have to go. They got to get the views in somehow. Yeah. I'm going to go back to it. And if there's anything interesting, we'll share. Yeah. I used to listen to that show all the time when Peter McCormick hosted it. It was a good one. He stopped. And then, I guess Danny started doing it, but I haven't listened to any of his shows. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry, Danny. Me either, except for this one. Yeah, I found it because I saw a clip of Tycho with Zest and Treasury, and he was on like a Cointelegraph podcast, and they were talking about Saylor being on this podcast, and it got heated. So it's very much like a podcast wormhole, basically, that I'm going down. But and now we're talking about it on our podcast. Yes, that's funny. All right. Yeah, I'll have to go back and listen, but maybe for the plane. Yep. Yeah. Next one is Strive. They have purchased Semler Scientific in an all stock transaction. So that's huge. Companies are consolidating. Yeah, it's happening. Yeah. And then we have Bitco. They're set to go public with almost a $2 billion valuation, which is insane. They're offering 11.8 million shares, priced between $15 and $17. And I mean, this is cool because they were one of the original signers on Stacks. So it's cool to see them making some moves. Yeah, Bitco's been around for a very long time too. They're just like one of the original kind of custodians in the space, I think. Yeah. Since like 2013, I think. Yeah, like now you see, there's a lot of conversations now with like how institutions are custodying their Bitcoin and stuff like that. And obviously they support more than just Bitcoin, but Bitcoin in the name, right? So they've been around for quite some time. I think we're one of the first, if not the first, to do like institutional level like custodying of crypto assets. Yeah. Big stuff. Yeah. But let's get into the news kind of on that same topic of custodying crypto assets for institutions. Standard Chartered is preparing a crypto prime brokerage push. So Standard Chartered, they're a $800 billion plus balance sheet global bank. They have deep roots in institutional markets. So that's where most of their clients are institutions. And they are planning to launch a crypto prime brokerage. So they're a London-based bank. They are going to house the operation within their SC Ventures unit and its wholly owned venture capital and innovation unit. So that's kind of where it's going to live within their organization. And I guess they made that decision. It's like a structural decision to place it outside of the bank's core regulated entity, which basically helps to avoid kind of some of the operational overhead, I think, that, is still that banks still have with custodying crypto and dealing with crypto. So having it kind of live underneath their ventures unit, I guess, is how they're kind of getting around some of those limitations. But in any case, banks are getting more involved. And despite that, though, there's still a lot of regulatory hurdles from what it sounds like for them to do that. Yeah. I'm seeing people having takes basically saying, if you thought 2025 was the year of institutions entering Bitcoin, 2026 is going to blow your mind because I think we're going to see a lot of banks entering the crypto game like this. I know like Saylor has talked about this, basically saying,
banks are going to come in huge, and it's not just like buying Bitcoin through ETFs. It's really offering like structured products and, trading platforms, all of these things. So it's hard for me to wrap my head around. I'm like, I don't know how it's going to play out, but I feel like it's going to be a huge year for bank adoption of Bitcoin and crypto in general.
Yeah, I think I think Strategy and like others have, done some stuff where they're like kind of borrowing against their Bitcoin, but to actually, integrate, your Bitcoin more into banking and do stuff like maybe being a liquidity provider or, doing more stuff to like put your Bitcoin more on chain. I think that's certainly something that we're going to see a lot more of this year.
Yeah.
I think like the quote was like, in 2025, like they bought Bitcoin, but now like in 2026, they're going to deploy it.
Yeah. It's much more about infrastructure than it is about just like having access to buying it. It's like, okay, well, now that we have it, like what else can we do with it? And that's where a lot of money will be made.
Yep. Yeah. Okay, next one is kind of the meat of the show, which is there was the Clarity Bill. Initial draft was released earlier this week, and since that happened, there's been a lot of developments. So we're gonna go over all of those. But to sort of recap, so the U.S. Senate Banking Committee's draft legislation, which is formally titled the Digital Asset Market Clarity Act, which is crypto market structure bill. That's kind of been one of the main ones that everyone's been looking forward to. Last year we had the Genius Bill, which was more concerned about stablecoins and making sure that, stablecoin providers like Circle, were one-to-one, backing their reserves and a lot of consumer protection type stuff. But Clarity is more on establishing regulatory frameworks for digital assets. It clarifies, is it the SEC or the CFTC that has oversight over these digital assets, and just provides a lot of clarity when it comes to tokenization, DeFi, some stablecoin stuff still, like a lot of consumer protection stuff, and then just establishing, the US or continuing to establish the US as like this global kind of crypto hub that Trump is so interested in doing. So it's kind of, it's been in the works for a while. I feel like we've been talking about the Clarity Act for like a year, and there's been a few things that have kind of stalled the bill or made it kind of take so long to get to the point that it's at right now. And it's kind of still getting stalled that we're going to talk about. But there's a few things here. I mean, we can maybe ping pong these different reasons. I think this is one of the main ones though, which is stablecoin regulations. And basically right now, the way that the bill is drafted is the bill prohibits rewards that are tied solely to holding stablecoins, but it does allow activity-based incentives. The one thing that happened with the Genius Act was, well, let me back up. If I'm on Coinbase and I deposit USDC on Coinbase, I can earn interest on my USDC on Coinbase. And I'm allowed to do that because I'm not dealing with Circle directly. So if Circle had, like a custody that I could, sign up for, right? And I deposited my USDC there, Circle, with the way that the Genius Act is structured, would not be allowed to pass along that interest to me as a user. But Coinbase is able to do that because they are not the custodian of like the assets that are backing it, like Circle is. But banks hate that because Coinbase is paying way more than, the average bank account is. And that's kind of where a lot of this back and forth is the banks are fighting this, what they consider like a loophole that's allowing users to earn such high interest rates compared to banks. So that's kind of where that has a little bit stalled is, Coinbase obviously wants to continue, providing interest for their users. But banks don't want that. And there's just a lot of back and forth on that issue in particular.
Yeah. And then the next reason why it's taken so long is really around DeFi and privacy. So when you look at this, I think it's good because it's offering protections for DeFi protocols and developers who are coding on, using, why am I blanking, self-custody, and like they're building self-custody products. So it offers like protections to them. But the biggest thing here, and where we can really get into it later, it's really around how it's expanding the government's access to financial records and just like completely eroding users' privacy. I know Galaxy has come out and said that this is the largest surveillance expansion that, the American people have seen since the Patriot Act, which is quite scary because that was a huge thing, that expansion of surveillance. So, Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, it's good because it's giving more clarity for developers and people who want to actually build in this ecosystem. It offers them some shields and some protections that they're not necessarily liable for, everything that users do on their protocols. But yeah, this huge introduction of like being able to freeze user funds, access people's records, that's where so much of this pushback is coming from. And I think it'll probably stall this bill even longer. So we can get into that a little bit more because I know like Brian Armstrong and Coinbase and some other companies have come forward and said, we would rather no bill than this bill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, all this DeFi stuff is super, super important. I just feel like, I don't know if I think there were certain things last year and maybe, those things weren't codified into law. So maybe it's just like the codifying into law part, which is what this bill would do is where the contention is. But when you want to buy Bitcoin and you're a US citizen, you have to connect to a compliant exchange like a Coinbase, and you buy it through there. And Coinbase, does KYC, AML, all that stuff, right? As they're required to. And then you can buy Bitcoin, and then you've gone through that step. Coinbase has done their due diligence to make sure that you didn't acquire it illegally or money laundering or anything like that, or you're not like a terrorist or something. And then you can withdraw it off the exchange, off of Coinbase, and then it's self custody, and you can do whatever you want with it. So, like, I guess I didn't like read through the entire 278 page bill, but where are they looking for what are they looking for in terms of like government access to financial records? Because like if the government were to like subpoena a Coinbase has that information to give to the government, and then on-chain metrics, and like it's easy to track on-chain movement, right?
Yeah.
So if Coinbase can be like, oh yeah, this user withdrew to this wallet address, it's pretty easy to just follow that chain. So I'm not sure exactly like what additional kind of stuff that they're asking for, but like all of this is like you can pretty easily trace like stuff already if you are the government and you have a specific need to track somebody down. So I don't know, like it feels like we already have no privacy.
That's a thing.
So
yeah.
So I just don't know like what else do they want? I guess the answer is in the bill, but it's kind of confusing to me.
I looked into sort of like what these new powers offer. It's hard to gauge like how much more extreme, the new powers in the bill are. Cause like you said, like tools like chain analysis, like the amount of connecting the dots that tool can do is just like nothing is private on Bitcoin basically. So, but it seems like some of the new powers that I've seen are like, they can trigger temporary transaction freezes without a court order. And so like, I don't know if that means they could just like tell Coinbase, like any transaction that this person does, like that can't happen. And like that really prohibits you from entering any DeFi ecosystem, because once you're through CeFi and into DeFi, then you can kind of do whatever you want. But it's almost like kind of like putting a perimeter around CeFi. So it's like you can't even get through to DeFi. I don't know if that makes sense in my head.
That's how it's been, basically.
That's the thing.
That's
it's
like how it already works.
Yeah.
So I think the one thing that, got loosened last year with like additional clarity sort of coming from like the SEC and all these like government entities that were trying to crack down on Bitcoin was saying like, oh, if you're a DeFi provider, you need to also store this information from your users.
True. Yeah.
And it's like, well, that was impossible, right? Because they don't have that information.
Yep.
So maybe if it has to do with that, then obviously that would make sense, why there's a lot of fighting back on it, because that essentially makes DeFi impossible to do.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, then of course that makes sense to fight. But
another one was,
I need to read through it more.
Another one was around creating new government and private sector data sharing programs. And so that kind of, to me, sounds like it's already there and available. It's just probably messy. And so maybe like cleaning up that process, which great for the government, not maybe great for the user. But again, it's kind of vague, right? Like we don't actually know like what this means in practice. It just seems like much more intense or like codified than what it currently is. And maybe that's why it sounds so frightening. I'm not sure, but
yeah. Next one that's sort of in contention is how tokens are classified and who oversees that has jurisdiction over that. So right now the draft treats certain tokens like XRP and Solana and Doge as non-ancillary assets, very similar to commodities like Bitcoin, especially if they're regulated in ETFs. But I guess this weakens the CFTC authority in favor of the SEC, which, you know, we know how that's gone, right? A lot of things being under the SEC has, you know, been in regulation by enforcement, and there's been a lot of issues there. And the CFTC has traditionally been a little bit more, not lax because they're still doing their job, but like not overly hostile, I guess.
The next one is illicit finance and AML, anti-money laundering. So this would expand treasury powers. And I think this extends to like DeFi front ends and certain protocols. Again, it's not super clear how this works, but it kind of just enforces AML a bit further in trying to prohibit fraud, which to most people, that probably sounds good.
Yeah.
It's just how it's done is always the tricky part for people who are, you know, want to respect privacy and true DeFi.
I personally have like less of a problem with this just because like those types of rules are, you know, like somebody like a Coinbase has to follow those rules, right? And like Coinbase is they're a private company, but like they can choose to serve whoever they want.
Totally.
So I don't know. I guess there's like always, you know, like the what was the thing where you could, was the website where you could like find somebody and you could just like give them cash and get Bitcoin, and like there's always like ways, I guess, around like exchanges, I guess. But
yeah,
I don't know. I just feel like these are businesses. They have to comply with this stuff. I don't know.
Yeah. If you're operating at scale too, it's yeah.
Next one is, I guess there's been more stuff on tokenized assets and equities. So basically this doesn't include anything related to like tokenized assets and equities in there. So like RWAs, you know, you hear a lot about, right? Real world assets, tokenizing stocks, putting them on chain, you know, enabling them to trade 24/7. You know, some of these companies, I think like Robinhood is one of them. I think even Coinbase, we keep talking about Coinbase on this episode, but Coinbase is trying to do it, and others, you know, to just bring more stuff on chain so you can trade it 24/7. And yeah, I guess that's just not happening under this bill.
And then the last one, which is pretty big, I would admit, is ethics and conflicts. So there are some amendments that address conflicts tied to the Trump family. We've talked about World Liberty Financial on here. And there's just like a lot of endorsements. Then we had like Melania coin, all of that kind of stuff. But yeah. Oh, go ahead.
It would, well, yeah, you mentioned like Melania coin and like, like all that stuff. Like we knew, I think like when it happened, I think we even kind of called it out. We're like, this is just gonna end badly. Like,
totally. There's like, no way that ends good.
What is the upside for this versus like there's so many downsides.
Yeah.
And we're seeing the results of that now, right? Where like, there's now all these issues. You know, if this passes, it's gonna, you know, make your meme coin more expensive, and it's just conflict of interest again. It makes sense, I guess, that these conversations would be happening, and it sucks like because they didn't have to launch these stupid meme coins, and then you wouldn't have had to worry about a lot of these things. Yeah.
I mean, so generally when I look at, you know, the Clarity Act, I'm not thinking that it's anti-Bitcoin. It kind of just seems like it's a government response to something like Bitcoin, because obviously the government is very much embracing Bitcoin as an asset, and, you know, as are a lot of institutions. But I think they like it as an asset, but they don't like it as a financial system, like a permissionless system. And it seems like that's what a lot of this is getting at, is trying to take back a little bit of control. So yeah, I don't know. I kind of just see this as like a classic government response.
Yeah, I think that's pretty well said. Yeah, it's just like the banks and, you know, all these traditional, you know, things that are just trying to hang on to, you know, TradFi, and meanwhile you have this new thing that's trying to come in and innovate and do all these really great things, but you know, the traditional folks don't want that. So just that back and forth. Yeah. So, you know, I think you already mentioned it, but like Brian Armstrong, CEO of Coinbase, he announced that they can't support the current draft, called it, worse than the status quo. We'd rather have no bill than a bad bill. But in a follow-up, he did say that he's actually quite optimistic that they will get to the right outcome with continued effort. will keep showing up and working with everyone to get there. It's a quote from him. I also saw, I think it was today, Mike Novogratz, who's the CEO of Galaxy. He also was like pretty optimistic that like, even though like we're in this situation right now where it kind of feels like the bill's kind of stalled and it just keeps going back and forth with these things, that he seems pretty optimistic that it's going to, you know, still get passed relatively soon. But yeah, I guess on Wednesday, the Senate Banking Committee Chairman, Tim Scott, he postponed the scheduled Thursday markup session for the bill, which was yesterday, which was kind of intended as a key step to, you know, continue debating some of these key advancements. And I guess today there was reports that they were going to be holding some more calls with different crypto industry reps to continue discussing concerns and potentially reopen negotiations. So hopefully a step in the right direction.
Yeah. We'll have lots more to come on this. Again, I think it's going to take quite some time. I mean, even, I don't know, I guess it's like a bill this size. It's kind of like a quick turnaround, I guess, in terms of government timelines.
Yeah. Yeah, I was trying to look the other day at if there was anything on Polymarket related to like timing, and there doesn't seem to be, which I was pretty surprised by. Like, when will the Clarity Act get passed, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't seem to be something that people are voting on yet.
Create the market.
We'll see. Yeah, maybe have to sign up for an account and try to do that.
It's funny. In terms of quick headlines, there wasn't a ton, but I thought that this one was interesting. It's usually things that catch my eye that I'm like, oh, that's cool. That's why I put them in here. Bitmine, they are technically an Ethereum strategy company. Every time I see Bitmine, I'm like, ooh, Bitcoin related. No, it's not. Anyway, they're investing $200 million into Beast Industries, which is Mr. Beast's company, I guess. And they have this big plan to acquire 5% of ETH, which I don't know. I thought this was like interesting. I always think it's cool when, you know, crypto crosses over into like a more mainstream audience and, you know, how they plan to play that out. So obviously there's massive distribution partnering with Mr. Beast. I don't know like what will happen, what the goal is, except for to acquire ETH. But yeah, I just thought that was like a cool thing to highlight.
Yeah, I think it was like a month or two ago we talked about Mr. Beast was like trying to get into crypto in some way. So maybe this is the result of that, I guess. This is like a partnership with Bitmine.
If only if it was Bitcoin. But anyway, you know.
I feel like he's been asked about Bitcoin before. I don't know like what his like position is. I feel like there's a lot of YouTubers like that they do own Bitcoin, but they just don't really like talk about it.
Yeah. Or they use it for gambling purposes.
That's why they don't talk about it.
A lot of streamers do that. Yeah. That's why.
Totally. Well, yeah, I think that kind of wraps it up for the week. Again, not too many things, but yeah, main thing is this Clarity bill. I don't think we're going to have a show next week because Kate and I are both going to be at a private Stacks Labs event that's happening. Hopefully we'll be able to like film some content and like eventually talk about that, but we will be traveling next week, so no show, but we'll be back the following week.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thanks for tuning in. Brandon, hope you have a great weekend.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
And we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.